Good morning and welcome to another episode of UFL Central live here on Shady Sports Network, where we discuss the UFL, obviously. So if you're a big UFL fan like the four of us here on screen right now, definitely recommend that you check the show out every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern time or thereabouts. But we'll go ahead and hit a quick intro video and then we'll come back with introducing everybody who's here on the show with me. All right. Don't know what's going on with the intro video there this morning, but apparently we're having a few issues here with StreamYard. Always great when it starts off terrible like that. But anyway, let's go around the board real quick. How are you guys doing this morning? We'll start with Travis.
I'm doing pretty good. Weather's starting to get a little bit better finally, so I always like that whenever, you're living up here in the Northeast, whenever the weather starts turning and we're done with our second or third winter now.
Fair point. I guess I'm probably the Lone Ranger over here that's not on the Northeast, so I can't really relate to that. But TJ, how are you doing, man?
Oh, man, I'm doing good, and it's the countdown, man. Less than a week. Let's go.
Absolutely. Michael, how are you doing this morning, man?
No, I'm good. Being in the Northeast, there's weather in the area, so my internet decides it wants to be shoddy today. So I'm hoping that I can stay steady through the whole thing and have no other issues.
Well, it definitely sounds like you're coming in loud and clear now. So, for whatever that's worth, hopefully it sticks that way for a little while, and we can definitely get your opinions on a couple of these topics. Because obviously, as you guys know, if you're joining us right now, this is kind of a new show for us. We haven't really covered the UFL recently. I think it's been probably, was it a year or 2 years at this point that we've kind of done like a dedicated UFL show, and now here we are back. And honestly, couldn't have asked for a better group of guys to cover it with us. We've already got some people checking in the comments. With apparently some Stallions fans, love it. So we're definitely going to get to some of that as well. But since we last had a show, we have not really covered the final cuts. We haven't really covered the full coaching staffs, the halftime shows that have been announced. We also haven't covered the fact that Rapolia said some things about expansion potentially, and there's a couple other topics that we'll kind of mix in today. So if you're joining us and we're touching on some topics that are a little bit old, there's a reason why. Obviously, as I mentioned, we haven't had a show in a while, but we're going to kind of get all caught up just in time for the season. And then from here on out, you can expect to see us basically every week. There might be some hit or miss weeks that we are not able to do a show, but for the most part, it'll be every week. But with that being said, we're going to get to the cuts first. We're not going to cover every cut. We're just mainly going to kind of roll through some of the guys that were surprising to us, some of the guys that we thought might have been impact players for 2026, but ultimately ended up on the waiver wire. So here is a compilation list that was put together by somebody on Twitter. I will put his name out there in just a moment. But let's go to Michael first on this one. Who were some of the surprise cuts or some of the guys that you were surprised to see let go?
I mean, primarily the basic ones are, you're the ones that you really honestly are expecting. I heard Cam Eccles-Looper had a really good, camp with Birmingham. He was, a receiver that we've seen in the CFL with a lot of success. I was a little bit surprised, but that Birmingham wide receiving crew it's pretty stacked across the board. So it was going to be tough for him to crack that. Your Columbus Aviators, I know that you kind of adopted them as your team, but Juwan Bushell-Betty, he has NFL experience. He started NFL games. He was a very solid offensive tackle for St. Louis for years. I was a little bit shocked to see him let go as well from there. And then, basically, Chim Okafor is another one for Dallas. I kind of picked one from each team that really kind of stood out. And Chim is another guy who's had multiple years of experience. He's had NFL experience as well. He has been a starter for the UFL for a few years. So I was a little bit surprised to see Dallas let him go as well, especially considering when you take a look at the final roster on that offensive line, it looks like there's a lot of, unknowns per se. I'm not going to eat up too much of it because I want to let the other guys go. But for my DC defenders, primarily Keandre Thomas, and I don't know how Travis feels about him because I know he's the other resident Defenders fan. But he's a cornerback who had success with us in the past. He's bounced back and forth between the NFL a few times. He's made some big splash plays. And if they're cutting him now before we even get into the season, they must feel really, really confident about that cornerback group as well. So I won't eat up too much more, but that's basically the four at the very top of that list there from those four particular teams that I was really bit shocked about. There's some other guys down on some other teams, but I'll let TJ and Travis go there and bounce off them there.
Absolutely. Well, with that in mind, I will bounce over to our other DC Defenders fan, Travis. Travis, what are your thoughts? Who are some of the names that stuck out to you on this list?
So a couple names that I had, I'm actually surprised that Michael didn't shout it out because he's the big O-line guy on the show. But the Kings cut Alec Lindstrom, who's a very good center, has had multiple times spent with the NFL and stuff. And who was he? He was with the Memphis Showboats prior, and he was, really a foundational piece of their offensive line. So I'm surprised that he got cut by the Kings. And then another person who I was surprised with was the Orlando Storm cut D. Anderson, a wide receiver. And I thought he was going to also be a really instrumental part in their wide receiver group just because he's such a different body type than a lot of their other guys. They also cut guys like Marquise Stevenson, but he kind of does the same things as like an Aaron Cruikshank and some other guys that they already have in their room. So that's why D. Anderson for me stuck out because he was, he's 6'4", 6'5". So I thought he was really going to be the jump ball size player in their wide receiver room, and he ended up not making the roster. And then lastly, a huge name that everybody was surprised got cut is Nate Brooks, a former all UFL cornerback with the Michigan Panthers, was released by St. Louis. And especially looking at their cornerback room, I thought he was going to be, CB1 essentially. Him and Luke Barku, I thought was going to be, pretty much their 1 and 2 there, but he ended up not making the team.
Fair point. TJ, what about you, my friend? Were there any names on this list that kind of stuck out to you?
Yeah, a couple. The first one was Jake Burton, guard with the Renegades. Spent time with UCLA. There we go. And Baylor, had some shots in the NFL. Spent time in the USFL and UFL as well. Picked up in the draft. I really thought he was gonna probably make the roster, but he ended up getting cut. The defensive tackle Jacob Sykes with the Orlando Storm, went undrafted, but made it to final cuts multiple times in the NFL, played with the San Antonio Brahmas most recently, and was again selected in the UFL draft. I thought he had a shot, but unfortunately he was cut. And then sticking with the Storm, since that's going to be, I guess, my team this year, since all the other teams I pick in this league don't come back so far, would be wide receiver Marquez Stevenson. Had some stops in the NFL, has been hampered with injuries. I was hoping that, I don't know if really surprised, but just more or less hoping now that he was seemingly healthy that he was going to have a real shot at it. But unfortunately, he didn't make the cut in, as Travis mentioned before, a pretty stacked wide receiver room for the Storm.
Yeah, I definitely think that a lot of those cuts made sense. I mean, all of you guys had some great recommendations and guys that I definitely did not necessarily think about. In fact, we have a lot less overlap than I expected going into this subject because some guys that really kind of stuck out to me and some of the guys that I had already kind of pointed out in our group chat. One of the guys specifically was Tyreek McAllister. This was a guy who led the CFL in yardage at one point a couple years back. Was a dynamic return man, signed with the Raiders. I think spent most of last season with them, if I remember correctly, and then ended up in the UFL. And when I saw him sign with the UFL, in my mind, that was a no-brainer guy who was going to be a one and done. He was going to play 1 year with the UFL and then go right back to the NFL and maybe land somewhere where he's stuck for a while. So A little surprised to see him cut there, especially because I thought Columbus had some openings at wide receiver. I felt like there was some availability for somebody to kind of step up and break out in that group. There were a couple other guys that kind of stuck out to me as well. And one of the guys that we've had here on this program at one point, not this show, but, via somewhere on this show at one point for an interview, was Leon O'Neal Jr. He had kind of carved out a niche for him over the past couple of years after playing with the Pirates, I think in 2022, if I remember correctly. He ended up in the CFL for a little bit and then really kind of carved out a good role with the Houston Roughnecks over the last couple seasons. So I thought he was going to stick, but he got let go as well. There were a couple retirements that kind of threw me for a loop. Marvin Wilson was another guy that I was not necessarily expecting to see on the cut list. Keelan Kennedy as well. He played really well a couple seasons ago with the Vipers. Nate Brooks was another one that kind of surprised me as well. Anybody else that kind of sticks out on this list that we haven't covered for any of you guys?
I mean, for me, Marvin Wilson was going to be like a little bit of a honorable mention type for Birmingham because I thought he would have fit that defense perfectly fine. I fully expect he's going to probably sign somewhere. He can be a very big disruptive defensive tackle. Smoke Monday is another guy. Your Aviators cut 3 safeties. I thought that was interesting. I didn't know how many they brought into camp with them, but Smoke Monday was another guy. He's had some, he's bounced off some NFL teams. He's done a wonderful job of in the past of being able to fill that gap or role when need be. I thought he'd be a starter in the UFL, so I'm a little bit surprised that he was released as well. It'll be interesting to see some of these guys as we move closer to the start of the season, if some of those names that we mentioned get picked up. I can tell you there's one on that list that I'm not surprised that was cut, and that's James Robinson.
Really?
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. He came into camp out of shape. I almost feel like it was one of those situations where he was like, fuck it, I'll give it a shot. And instead of actually dedicating himself to it, I think it was just like he was trying to rest on what he had done in the past. So I'm not really surprised that he was released, to be honest with you. From everything I read in camp, from camp reports and whatnot, it sounds like it was almost like he was there because he had nothing else to do. Like he was bored, essentially. So I was hoping that he was going to come in and make a name, because I feel like that would be a perfect type of player that would be good for the UFL to have. But I don't know if it's just the mentality that because it's the UFL and not the NFL, I don't have to try as hard. So
that's fair. You missed this, Michael, but I told TJ and Travis before the show that I should have been giving Chris a hard time yesterday because Smoke Monday got cut, but Michael Lawson made the roster, and they both play safety. So, anyway, I'll have to razz him a little bit later on, but that's a story for another day.
I'm insanely happy for Michael Lawson, by the way. I'm insanely happy for Michael Lawson, by the way.
Same here. Honestly, man. Full disclosure, I talked to him earlier this offseason, and he was ready to retire before Columbus signed him. So he was just, thinking he was at the end of his career and didn't really see, indoor football in his future again if he wasn't going to end up outdoors. And then they signed him like a week or two later, and then here we are. So really excited for him in particular. And then, of course, Jalen Morton. If you're watching here, there's a theme. I'm a huge Southwest Kansas Storm fan, so both of those guys were with the team last year, and now are in the UFL with the Columbus Aviators, which is why I've adopted the Aviators as my team. I'm going to roll through a couple comments here, and then we'll get on to the next subject. But the Sports Den Network checking in. Go Louisville Kings. Curtis, we'll have to get you on the show at some point throughout the year here. He will be doing a Louisville Kings dedicated podcast on the Sports Den Network that will also simulcast with ShadySports this year. So definitely keep an eye out for that. It's called All Hail the Kings. Really awesome thumbnail he created for it. Beer Snake. So we must have another DC Defenders fan in the group here. Kevin Hanlon. Commissioner of the AAL, by the way, tuning in. Really appreciate that, Kevin. Good morning again, Sportsnet Network. Kevin O'Hanlon saying, okay, UFL coverage. Nice. That's right. We do a little bit of everything in here. Got a bunch of comments from somebody talking about penalties. Offsides only penalty. No holds barred. No penalties. That's why they get paid the big bucks, play outside. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but that would be an interesting brand of football. Dude in the South that rains half the summer. I want domes here. Okay. Domes are junkyards,
some
worthless.
talks about some domes.
NFL needs to play all games outside and before 5 p.m. stadium time. All right. Stallions over everybody. And rest in peace, Dennis.
Dennis, rest in peace, my man.
Yeah, rest in peace, Dennis. I'm not sure who Dennis is, but rest in peace.
But it's sad that he has to rest in peace. So
there you go. Exactly. All right, so we're going to move on to the next subject. But before we do, we'll take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be right back.
This is Current. It's the card my parents used to pay me for mowing the lawn, running errands, and doing well in school.
Oh, wow.
This is the card I used when we got the idea to make our own clothes. And we spread the word, drove downtown, and sold everything we made. This is the card I use to do the things that really matter. This is Current. Visit current.com and download the app for free today.
How many times a week?
Like, three, four times, maybe.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
The mountains you climb. Maybe stairs. The records you set. Maybe personal. The fans you inspire. Maybe family. No lights. No camera. Just action. You don't have to be a pro. You just need HoneyStinger.
All right, obligatory sponsor mentions out of the way. Here is the next big topic that I really wanted to cover because hot damn, did the UFL hit it out of the park with some of these halftime shows. I personally think that they literally couldn't have picked better artists for some of these markets. I mean, are you kidding me? Nelly and the St. Lunatics in St. Louis, that's just genius. But anyway, I wanted to go around the horn here and kind of get you guys' thoughts. I know we're all similarly aged, so I'm pretty sure all of us know who all of these artists are, and that Ludacris is missing from this list. He will be playing in Houston, just so everybody's aware. But let's go to Travis first on this one. What are your thoughts overall on this list?
I'm not going to speak to who the individual guys are that they got, but I think as a whole, it's a very good promotional piece for them to be, getting these big name people and announcing it, before the games even start, just to try to get, boost that market, especially for the, their stadium openers and stuff. So I think it's a great thing that the league's doing, and, hopefully that they continue to do something in this vein. Maybe this will only be a kind of stadium opener thing that they do every year where they get these big name people. But, all in all, I think it's a very good promotional thing. And like you said, they picked some great people for the markets that they're in.
Agreed. Let's go to TJ next. TJ, what are your thoughts on this list? And of course, Ludacris and Houston.
Well, I don't like that genre of music, so I'm not going to watch it. I'm going to complain about it on social media. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, the fact that I'm more of a rock metalhead and I still recognize basically all these names shows how much they hit it out of the park. I mean, when you don't even listen to the genre, but I recognize those names. Ludacris, obviously, huge name from, when we were growing up. So I think the UFL did a great job. I think, all the things that they're doing, with, Rapoli being involved, they're hitting it out of the park. And for the opening games, I mean, you don't want them to go to the games for the halftime show. You want them to go for the game itself. But that is now some serious added motivation for fans to get in the stands now to be able to see these performers at halftime too. So I like it. It's a really great move by the UFL. Definitely stock rising, in my opinion.
Agreed. Michael, this was one of the topics that you kind of brought up in our group chat. What are your thoughts on these performing artists?
Yeah, I'm the opposite of TJ. Like I recognize almost all these names. I don't know who Ty Myers and Russell Dickerson are though, but I did a little bit of a search on them. They're perfect for the area. It makes total sense why they're going to be there. And the great thing about this is what TJ just said is like when you're there for the game, that's great. But when you have a league like this, and the NFL has been kind of like the staple of this, it becomes an entertainment kind of league as well. And the UFL needs to find entertaining ways to keep people invested in the games. And this is like an opportunity and chance, especially like if you're around this age and you do recognize who everybody is, especially like Ludacris and Nelly. They were huge at one point in time. Wale is really, really well. He's very heavily invested in the DC area. He's actually done a lot for his community in DC. He's basically like a very centralized local celebrity that everybody happens to know who he is. And it's really awesome that they were able to get him. But the biggest thing is now is, like TJ said, it's a motivating factor to go to this game because now you get a little mini concert from people that you may never have been able to afford to see, right? It's going to be affordable. So you get to go there and for the home opener, you get to catch these guys, perform. And, if you're a fan of any one particular person in that sense, like DC, we probably expect close to a sellout every week anyways. Wale is just going to go ahead and just, make sure that actually happens in their home opener. So I'm sure that Nelly will do that in St. Louis as well. And I'm sure that, Ludacris will help with Houston, which we both know has probably struggled the most on the attendance side. So I think it's smart. I think it was really smart. And I think, Rapole did a very good job of making sure that he got people that were recognized, like TJ said, who's more of a rock head. He still knew who everybody was, even though he didn't listen to that genre. So that's really cool in that sense. So I think it's going to be awesome to see. And like TJ and Travis both said, really, I think it's trending in the right direction for the UFL to make sure that they're finding other ways to keep people invested in what's happening.
I 100% agree. And this, not only does it follow the vein of what they're trying to do in the regionally basing, like a lot of the roster building and stuff like that. Because, if you look at it, Gucci Mane's from Alabama. Wale, like you mentioned, is huge in the DC area. Ty Myers, he's from Texas. Russell Dickerson, I believe, is from Tennessee, so he's a little ways from Kentucky, but still kind of in that area. Nelly has a group called the St. Lunatics, because he's from St. Louis or grew up in St. Louis. And then Ludacris is not from the Houston area, but his music is very popular in the South of the United States. So it makes a lot of sense. So I think they knocked it out of the park with a lot of these artists. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a huge Gavin DeGraw fan or even that I knew who Ty Myers or Russell Dickerson were before this. But I did grow up in a household where my brother and, one of our hosts here on Shady Sports Network listened to hip hop a lot. And Wale, Nelly, Gucci Mane, Ludacris, all of those guys were very common in our household for many, many years. So it was kind of cool to see not only the names that they were coming up with, but the fact that they were regionally tied. So just another way that I think the league has done a really good job of trying to involve the communities in these games and get the support for the teams that we all know has kind of been lacking over the past couple seasons. So the last or another topic that we wanted to discuss today was the fact that Rapole has mentioned that by 2030, he anticipates adding 4 more teams. So essentially, we're in the 2026 season. Obviously, they're not going to be adding any more teams this season. So over the next 4 seasons, we should, more or less get another 4 teams, whether that's 1 a season or 4 teams in 4 years. It remains to be seen. So there isn't really a lot to unpack on this one. This one I kind of just wanted to get your guys' ideas, thoughts on markets they should target. Maybe are there some teams that have been in the USFL or the XFL in the past that you would like to see back? Stuff like that. So if you don't have a ton of thoughts on that, no big deal. We don't have to go terribly deep into this one, just given the context of the situation. But let's go to Michael first on this one.
Well, this is an interesting one because I think that when you take a look at the demographics of where this league is and how they are, it's kind of very, Midwestern and Southern based. So I would like to see them eventually expand, to the West again. Seattle obviously was really, really popular. It's probably going to be all four of us would agree that Seattle should probably have a team. The issue is you don't have another market in that area that's specifically set to make it worthwhile. I would like to see San Diego return, but San Diego didn't have extremely large attendance records set when it was with the AAF, though the Fleet were trending in the right direction, and I think San Diego can house a team. It would be the only other market on the West Coast at this particular time that I could see in this sense. But they still have the two teams in Texas, which I think is very interesting. I'd like to see them try to avoid some of the bigger markets if they could for a little bit. I like these middle of the road, teams that have strong college fan bases, right? Orlando, I was actually surprised was willing to bring them back after they got burned again. I didn't think we'd ever see a team in Orlando again. And I actually think it was a smart move, even though I know St. Louis fans don't agree with it, to move Anthony Becht over there because of how much work he did in the St. Louis market. I think it's going to be good for Orlando as well. But they have a very strong football base with UCF there. So it's not like that they don't have a craving for football. It's just a matter of trying to get into the community to drum up support for these teams. So I'd like to see them kind of stick around there. So I don't have a particular market in the Midwest area that I would like to see at the moment, because I feel like Columbus was actually a perfect spot. I think they hit that because we all know that Columbus has been clamoring for a team, at least, reportedly anyways, for a while now. So, maybe back into Michigan because the Panthers were starting to trend in the right direction. Maybe get out of Detroit though, find another, Eastern Michigan, maybe, what is it, Ypsilanti Stadium or that area. But just, I'd like to see them stick to this and before getting into the bigger markets. I don't want to see New York and Los Angeles yet. It's too damn expensive to try to do it there. Eventually, once you get more stable as a foundation, then outwardly into the New York and Los Angeles areas. But at this moment, I think the bigger markets probably should be way off. But everybody's always like, oh, Los Angeles, New York. I don't want that at the moment. I would rather see them maybe get into Virginia. Virginia would be a nice state. They've never had a professional team. It's always been Maryland or DC. But it would be a nice little generic rivalry with DC, because Virginia and Virginia Tech are both really popular. So you can easily be here's a rivalry, just an organic rivalry between DC and Virginia at this point. So, something like that. North Carolina would be a nice little spot. Charlotte, somewhere in that range. Greenville has a very strong following with ECU. They can house I think it's 23,000 or something built stadium over there or in that range, but there's plenty of soccer stadiums over there as well. North Carolina's riddled with soccer teams. So we've talked about this before, Sam. I'd like to see them strike a deal with the MLS if they can to kind of split, soccer stadiums for a while until they, get that foundation. That'd be kind of cool as well. But strong soccer supported teams, finding those areas as well could work in this sense too. I'm sure they'll expand into the Northwest at some point in time, the Northeast at some point in time as well. But I would stick it to the Midwest, South, East Coast for right now, and spiral out, where it makes more sense.
Just gonna throw this out there. I don't know who owns the trademarks or anything, so But the Virginia Destroyers did play in the original UFL in the Virginia Beach Sportsplex, about 14,000 seat arena or stadium. Sorry, wrong show. Arenas yesterday.
However, Jay Gruden was the head coach.
What's that?
Yep.
However, Jay Gruden was the head coach.
Jay Gruden was the head coach.
Was he? I thought he was Florida Tuskers.
That was before they moved to Virginia.
Yep.
No. All right then. There you go. I'm not gonna lie. I did.
Sorry, I'm a big Jay Gruden fanatic.
The initial UFL, so I apologize for that knowledge. But I knew there had been a team in Virginia. I just totally forgot who it was at the time. I had to look it up. But there, so Virginia makes some sense in terms of a market. Another one that you kind of mentioned, or you didn't mention, but was up in that area, Hartford, Connecticut. If you're talking about like natural rivalries with regional opponents for DC. That could be a reasonable thought process there. How about Omaha in the Midwest again? The Omaha Nighthawks. That was my original UFL team back in the day. But Travis, what are your thoughts on this? Sorry, Michael, didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I just said Denver because I know how much you've been wanting the Denver Rush or Denver Gold or whatever it is
Denver
over there
Gold,
for years now.
Would love that. I've pretty much written off that hope at this point, especially now that the Broncos are building a new stadium. So I can only imagine that's going to be even more expensive moving forward. But we'll see. I definitely wouldn't turn down a UFL team here for sure. And we do have MLS stadiums. Just saying. But Travis, go ahead, man.
Yeah, to go along on what Michael said a little bit, I think all of us would want a team in Seattle again because I think that's a really great market for them. But if you're going to move a team out there, you kind of have to have a buddy out there. You can't just have the lone wolf out all the way on the other end. There was talks about moving a team to Boise this year. If you remember a couple months back before we officially got the cities, there was talks of potentially going to Boise. And I think that would be a great market. Like Michael said, amazing college atmosphere there. And if you need more of that, Mountain West, East Coast identity, I think Seattle and Boise would be two great teams to add out there. And then selfishly, I would love Pittsburgh just because Pittsburgh's a little bit closer to me than DC. If there was a Pittsburgh team, that'd probably put me at a little bit of a conflict because, like Michael said, that would be a natural rivalry, and that would kind of put me in a conflict of not knowing who to root for anymore. But Pittsburgh does make sense because, of course, a couple years ago we had the Pittsburgh Maulers with the USFL, and we do have some soccer stadiums in Pittsburgh, like the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, I believe, or the River Dogs, something like that. So there is some soccer stadiums, and there is some other football stadiums that's right outside of the city. So it's not like they have to play in Acrisure or anything. But there is some stadiums that would be available because, unfortunately, with the USFL, we never actually saw the Maulers play in Pittsburgh. So we have no idea what their attendance would have been like. And then we also heard talks this offseason about maybe Oklahoma City. And I think that would be another really interesting market. Still staying in that, southern Midwestern territory, but we're getting out of Texas, which is, I don't think we need another team in Texas. And that would also automatically be another rivalry because we know the rivalries between the Texas area and the Oklahoma area. So that would just be another, southern Midwestern team and another market that doesn't have a NFL team right now, but has a really strong college base.
No, I think anywhere in Oklahoma would probably be a good idea. As you mentioned, huge college following, but also if you look at other alternative football teams, the Tulsa Oilers have some killer attendance and have since day one. So, I mean, if you're looking for markets and comparable, attendance figures, the Tulsa Oilers are getting, 8 to 10,000 fans. That's better than a lot of these UFL teams have gotten over the years. So if you could find a way to get into that market, I think that makes a lot of sense as well. TJ, what about you, man? Any markets that stick out to you or any teams you'd like to see return?
Oh man, this put me down kind of like a fantasy football rabbit hole last night thinking about it. It would be great to see them almost bring in a whole Northeast/East division, pretty much. Kind of like we all touched on, like North Carolina, the Maryland area. Canton, Ohio was utilized in the past as a hub. They wanted a team. They thought they were going to get a team, and then when they didn't, so I don't know if that maybe burned them a little bit or not. But I know Canton was really interested at one point. You have Cincinnati, obviously in Cleveland, Columbus in Ohio, Pennsylvania. We used to have 2 teams here. Now we have none. The Maulers got to a championship, and then we're about to see them in Pittsburgh, and then, oh no, we're going to pull the plug on them. The Philadelphia Stars. I kind of agree with Michael. They tried the New York idea. I don't think they're quite there yet either. I would stay a little bit lower. I would stay lower than New York. Try to stay away from there until you get a little bit better footing. But yeah, I would love to see a Northeast division, and specifically, at least one PA team come back because I miss it. It was nice having a team 45 minutes down the highway.
Yeah, I will comment on that. If they were to expand into Philadelphia for any reason, and they were to go into New York, I almost want to see a team in like the Buffalo area or Syracuse. Syracuse is a place that I've been kind of clamoring for years now, because the dome up there is usually rocking even when Syracuse football isn't very good. And I feel like it's a kind of a little bit of an untapped market where people don't even ever think about New York being that spot, right? Nobody's ever going, yeah, like that's the area I want to be in. And I think that you could, where you see Buffalo's success with the Bills, I know that it would be kind of, putting him against the NFL and NFL market, but I feel like that community and that fan base would still be willing to adopt a second team, considering what they do for the community in that area. I mean, they're one of the only fan bases I've ever seen that will go out and show up to shovel, regardless if they were getting paid or not, just so they could see their Bills play, right? So I think that they would be a market that could handle it as a competition, but as like, oh, the rich get richer, I get to watch more football now, right? That would be kind of my thought process if I was Rapoldi and I was looking at New York. I think I would be looking away from like, the New Jersey area where, both New York teams really truly play. And in that sense, if I was to go into New York, Philadelphia has always been a great spot. I think the Stars would have had fairly good attendance if we were able to see it. Pittsburgh may have very well had some good attendance with the Maulers. They actually had a fairly successful team. You two live in Pennsylvania. Is there any other markets in Pennsylvania or any other places in Pennsylvania that you think could house a team on a smaller scale than Philadelphia or Pittsburgh?
I've said for years I would absolutely love a state college team. I don't know where they would play, though. They'd probably have to play at like Penn State's soccer stadium is probably what they would have to play, which isn't very big. I don't know how many it would seat, because there's no way that they could play at Beaver Stadium, because that's like 110,000 seat stadium. But I've clamored for years that I would love a state college team, because it is such a rowdy college atmosphere. Even like I went to Penn State versus Kent State last year, which is, I mean, what the outcome's going to be.
Oh, yeah.
You know what the outcome's going to be. But there was still like 95,000 people there, or like 100,000 people there. It was insane. Even though they won by 60, like it was, still rocking, still crazy. The streets absolutely lined with people, parked 4 miles away from the stadium. Like it was still insane. It like you wouldn't have known if they were playing Kent State or if they were playing, a Big Ten team.
Yeah.
So I think State College would be a fantastic area. You would just have to figure out where they would play, because I don't know where they would play other than Penn State or other than Beaver Stadium. I know they have a smaller soccer thing, but I don't think it seats very many. So you'd probably, have to look kind of in the neighboring just outside of State College area.
Just looked it up while you were speaking there, Travis. Jeffrey Field, I believe it's called, only seats about 5,000 fans. So you are right. very small. But similar to Cashman, they have gone that direction before. So I mean, I think there is something to be said if they can pack out a 5,000 seat arena or a stadium versus having an empty 18,000 seat stadium. Maybe that's the way to go. Now, I'm not saying that leaves you very much room for growth in that market at that point, but I'm always a proponent of having more support than you can handle in terms of ticket sales. So if you've got a waiting list for season tickets and stuff like that, you're probably in good shape. At that point, you can figure out ways to go to other venues that could potentially allow you to grow in the future. But a good problem to have is having not enough seats for the fans that want to come to your games. We've never witnessed that yet for the UFL. So even a 5,000 seat stadium, I think, is not out of the question at this particular point in their growth. I wanted to pull up the map real quick since we're on this subject, because I think this kind of helps, and I should have done this earlier, so I apologize, but this kind of helps kind of just graphically or geographically look at this and kind of wonder how they could do this. So if you're looking at expansion and you're trying to limit travel and at the same time trying to avoid getting too far out in the weeds, like going to Seattle, like we mentioned before, you kind of look at some of these states around here, and as Michael kind of mentioned before, you get your South Carolina, maybe a Georgia team, maybe a team in Louisiana, kind of bridge that gap between Alabama and Texas.
Yeah, to echo that, Sam, real quick, to echo that, if you take a look at this map, you see it. Like Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, it's all empty in that area, So, even Knoxville, Tennessee may even be a decent little spot for a rivalry with the Kings as well. Go ahead. I just wanted to mention that real quick if you take a look at that. So
no, 100%. That's kind of what I was getting at is, I was sitting there kind of looking at markets that you guys were not naming as we were going, and I'm sitting here looking at it, and you kind of hit the nail on the head. But really, as a group, you guys, all three of you, mentioned markets that make a lot of sense if you're trying to expand but kind of keep it condensed, not necessarily go too crazy. There's a lot of different markets and states that you could really kind of utilize here. Maybe you go the route of bringing back teams like we mentioned before, whether it's, from the original UFL or the USFL or the XFL, what have you. I mean, there's plenty of markets that you can still tap, with just those leagues as well. So a lot of room for growth here for the league in general, though, which I like to see. And I like to see that they're talking expansion, which, it's been mentioned in the past, but it's kind of been thrown by the wayside over the years while they were trying to focus on stability in general. So kind of glad to see that we're taking that step, hopefully, toward eventual growth, which I think is the way that this league has to grab a foothold with casual fans eventually.
I think it's also
this is an interesting idea. Do you think they would ever consider like Toronto?
Toronto would have to be one of those things where they moved into the Northeast, I think. I think you would have to have another team to kind of bridge that, because if you take a look at that map, and even when we were talking about Boise earlier, the only way that you would be able to, if they had moved Birmingham to Boise, which is what the talk supposedly was, that is still almost like a Seattle type move, right? If you take a look at where the map is, where everything else is, Boise's not as far as Seattle, but from the geographic standpoint, it's still a good distance out there. So you would need to try to couple that together. So I think that if you were going to do Toronto, which I honestly think would be fantastic, honestly, you'd have to also try to get a little bit closer to that point, maybe with a team in New York or Pennsylvania, or probably New York in some capacity, to try to bridge that. If you are stable and you have money coming in and you're whatever, I don't think it would be as big of a deal, and Toronto would be a perfect, nice little, spot to be in personally. And to touch on base on what Travis said about Oklahoma City, honestly, what I would like to see personally is I would like to see San Antonio come back and Houston move to Oklahoma City.
Wouldn't be a terrible idea.
I think Houston is just they're not adopting whatever team is there as a second team.
Yeah,
It
and
just doesn't feel like it. And San Antonio at least had a better attendance than Houston. And
yeah,
if you really get a good team that can be in the community in San Antonio, I think that you could thrive in San Antonio and compared to Houston. And then you get your Oklahoma City or Tulsa team as well, in that sense. And you only have 2 teams in Texas, and you're not running 3 teams in Texas.
it's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea at all. Honestly, there's like we said, there's a lot of different markets they could go to. But to your point, I mean, Boise. You look at Boise on the map compared to what they have right now, and that is a long flight.
Yeah.
So yeah, especially for like Orlando, which I know we're all coming out of Arlington at the end of the day, which definitely makes it a little bit easier to get to Boise. But at the same time, like that would make for some rough travel at points of time. Which I mean, if we're being honest here and we're really kind of having an honest discussion, I mean, we have to at some point have the goal be these teams live in their markets.
Yes.
At some point you have to start doing the training camp situations. Like, I mean, that's one of the things that made me a big NFL fan. I will never forget being a kid, being at training camp and, getting signatures from the NFL players or, whatever, because we were right there at training camp and they would take time to sign everybody's stuff at training camp. But then if you go to the games, it's totally different. So I think that's a way for these teams to get in market and, again, grab a foothold if they live in their market. So I would personally, if obviously Rapoli's not listening to the show, he definitely doesn't have time to listen to every UFL podcast, but if he's happened to listening to some advice, I would say, get the teams in the individual markets and then worry about expansion, in my personal opinion. And then, expand into the markets like that. Maybe even if you want to expand to a hub and then do like a regional expansion, maybe that makes sense down the road too. But we have got to get teams in markets from start to finish all year long, not the traveling out of a hub thing anymore. Although I get it. Obviously, finances are not unlimited here. Let's take another quick commercial break, and then we'll give you guys our previews and predictions for 3 of next week's games. So the way we're going to do with previews and predictions on this show, given it's Sunday and we're probably splitting the weekend, we will give you guys the shows or the games that will be played before our next show. So Friday and the 2 Saturday games, and then the Sunday game, we will give you our prediction next week when we come back for our next episode. So quick commercial break. We'll be right back with our previews and predictions, and then we'll wrap this bad boy up. So we'll keep it nice and tidy around an hour, and hopefully you guys keep tuned in the whole time. If you haven't done so already, make sure to hit that like button, comment, subscribe, or follow us wherever you're watching, and let us know what you think of the show so far.
I'm just being myself, cool as can be. When I'm being myself, you wish you were me. It's so easy. Get out your own way. It's just so easy.
All right, we are back. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and pull up the games real quick. As mentioned before, there are 3 games we'll be giving you previews, or not super in-depth previews, but we'll be giving you a short preview and prediction for each of us in terms of why we're picking the teams that we're picking. And then I'll even pull up the betting lines, and we'll throw those out there if they're even available yet. So with that in mind, here are the games at hand this upcoming weekend. On the kicking off on the 27th, ending on the 29th. As mentioned before, we'll be giving you these 3 games initially here. So let's start with TJ this time. And you can go ahead and just roll through all your picks for all 3 games.
Okay. The Friday night game, I got to go with Birmingham. Just the more experienced team. You have AJ McCarron at the helm for the first game, but he's also been a little bit of a veteran of this league as well, and he's coming out with a vengeance because of everything that went down with the Battlehawks. So I'm going to go with the Stallions in that one. DC and St. Louis. I got to go with DC. Obviously defending champs, and also, or no, I'm sorry, not the defending champs. The against St. Louis losing their head coach and everything else. So Houston and Dallas. I gotta go with Dallas, man. Houston, I gotta see if they can prove it. They've I have more faith in Dallas doing good this year than Houston personally. And then Columbus and Orlando. Since I'm an Orlando fan this year, man, I guess we're going head to head right off the bat on Sunday.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. With that in mind, we'll go ahead and slide over to Michael. Who do you have in these 3 games this weekend?
Well, I mean, honestly, you take a look at the dynamics of a lot of these teams. A lot of these teams went through a lot of changes, new head coaches, the new overall approach to how they allot players, et cetera, et cetera. I'm taking Louisville in the opener. I think that Louisville had a great turnout from a fan base standpoint. I think that they had a lot of support for this team. I feel like this stadium is going to be rocking. Birmingham is going through a lot of changes. AJ McCarron is in. It's no longer Coach Holtz over there. It's basically a brand new team. It's essentially the exact same as the Louisville Kings. It's a brand new team in this sense. I always side with the home team in that case, and in this situation, I think Louisville is going to pull what would be considered an upset in week 1. Moving on to the next game, the defending champs, the DC Defenders, they're the most stable franchise out of here coming back this year. They didn't have a ton of changes. Shannon Harris returns. I think Fred Keiss is returning as the offensive coordinator, if I remember correctly. So this team is Jordan Tiamu returns. They're the most stable team that is returning this year. I think they're going to beat St. Louis at home, or when St. Louis is at home on the Saturday game. And then, Houston is, I'm a lot like TJ in this sense. I have to see what I need to see something before I can honestly pick them. So I'm going to take Dallas, even though Dallas went through a ton of changes as well. It feels too much like the Houston teams, whether you call them the Roughnecks, the Gamblers, or whatever, of years past, where they're just going to struggle out of the gate. So I'm gonna take Dallas in that sense, and then obviously we'll talk about Sunday next week. But that I feel fairly confident about those.
Travis, what about you, man?
Yeah, one point that I want to throw out too is a lot of these teams, if I'm not mistaken, we don't know starting lineups yet, and there are some quarterback battles going on that some of them we kind of think we know who's starting, but there might be some very close to game time decisions. So that's going to be another interesting point. But moving on to the Birmingham Stallions versus the Louisville Kings, I just think AJ McCarron has a lot of experience in this league, obviously not in coaching, but he still retained a lot of the Birmingham roster, and I think Birmingham's going to get it done, but I think it's going to be a very close game. I think they're only going to win by, maybe a field goal or one score, and that's going to be it. So I think that's going to probably be a really tight game, and I think Louisville will get better as the season goes on, but I think they're going to start off with a loss here. And DC Defenders versus St. Louis, returning champs. I'm going to have to ride with DC until they give me a reason to go otherwise. So I'm going to say DC wins. And then Houston and Dallas, similar to what those two have said. Houston, we don't really know who's even starting at quarterback, whether it's going to be Hunter Deckers or Donovan Smith, maybe Nolan Henderson. We kind of think maybe we have an idea, but that might be a game time decision. So I think the Dallas Renegades are going to end up beating Houston. I don't think Houston's going to be as bad as a franchise as they have been historically, but I think there's going to be some kinks that they're going to have to work out, though.
Fair point. So I'm sorry, that was Birmingham. Was that DC as well?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I thought. Perfect. All right. Well, I actually have similar picks, other than the fact that I think I value the home field advantage at St. Louis a little bit more than the rest of our panel here. I think I've got St. Louis in week 1. I do agree that you guys are not wrong. DC is by far the most stable team in this league in the sense of returning coaches and players. So they definitely have the least amount of adaptation time. And obviously, we have no idea what Ricky Prohl is going to be like as a head coach yet. However, I do like the staff that he surrounded himself with. And I do, as mentioned before, really, really like the fact that when you're talking St. Louis, you can pretty much guarantee there's going to be 20,000 plus fans in the stadium, and they're going to be rowdy. So I really think that St. Louis still has that advantage. Maybe we come out of week 1 and realize it's not quite as impactful as I might think. But I also am agreeing on the Dallas and Houston game. Not only are they the home team in this one, but I also think that, stability wise, they've probably had a little bit less in the terms of changes overall on the roster, that they can find a little bit of stability there and come out hot this season. So I also think, despite the fact that they had a coaching change, to me on the surface, it feels like if you were going to bring in a coach that was similar to Bob Stoops, Rick Neuheisel makes a lot of sense. So I think that he's bringing in a veteran coaching presence who's coached spring football before, and I don't think he's necessarily going to struggle as much as a quote-unquote first-year head coach in the UFL might if he did not have that experience. So I'm with everybody on that one. I think Dallas is going to bring home the win. So it's going to be an interesting week of games for sure. I definitely think that much like Travis said, Louisville probably is going to struggle out the gate a little bit, but then they're going to get better as the season goes on. I think St. Louis and DC is going to be a really good game regardless. Wouldn't shock me if DC won that by any stretch. Obviously, as mentioned before, they're a good team. But I'm also curious to see how Houston does because of what you guys said. Like, in the back of my mind, Houston is still that kind of, this is a bad term, but bottom feeder team that they've been the past couple seasons, where they've kind of struggled to even hit 5 wins. So just obviously I'm not going to hold you guys to this, but just guessing at this early in the season, do we see Houston possibly breaking 500 this year? Let's go to TJ first.
I have them mentally around 3 to 4 wins.
Fair. Michael?
If Hunter Deckers is the starter, I think it gives them their best chance to hit 500, but I don't see they're going to. I'll agree with the comment in the comment that was made in the chat that they're going to that might keep them in, but I'm with TJ. I got them around 3 to 4 wins.
Travis, what about you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same ballpark. I just think pretty much every other team has more talent, except for maybe Columbus, because I also slate Columbus, not to throw shade at you, Sam, but I also kind of put Columbus in that same 3 to 4 win category. So I think it's going to be pretty competitive with them. So I would put them at just below 500, I would say.
Oh, no shade on my part, my friend. You're fully aware. Feel free to have your opinions here, by all means. So definitely, regardless, I think that there's going to be some very interesting games coming up this weekend. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm very excited to get back in the swing of things, between indoor football as well as the UFL kicking off. And then, only a month or two after that, we'll have the CFL rolling in as well. So we're in the thick of things at this point, my friends. So I'm very excited about all that, because obviously at this point it's nonstop football for the rest of the year. So Justin Hall and Kirkland with Houston are some great receivers. 100% agree. Hall's a huge big play threat every time he touches the ball, and then Kirkland is steady no matter where he plays. But I definitely have some questions about the team in general, just because of their past, which I guess really isn't a fair assumption considering all the changes, but I mean, at the same time, we have to work with what we know so far, which is unfortunately not much heading into 2026. So it's going to be an interesting season kickoff for sure. But any final thoughts from any of you guys before we close down shop here for this morning?
Not for me, honestly. I think my only thing would be Louisville. They've had a lot of rosters turnover. So even though I picked them in week 1, I think that would probably be something that would be concerning. But on the flip side of that too, I think they did a very good job of getting guys in pretty quickly, and they were there for most of this roster that's there has been there through camp. So I think that's been a good steady presence, and I'm putting my trust into Coach Redmond over there in Louisville for my week 1 prediction, which is why I went with them basically. But other than that, I don't really have any other final thoughts. I'm excited for the season to kick off on Friday, on Fox.
Absolutely. And for anybody wondering, I was looking for the betting lines. I did not see them. I'm sure they'll be available, throughout the season as we go. It might be a situation where we can only talk about the Sunday betting lines, just given the way everything's set up. But we'll see what we can do. Maybe we can talk about the last 3 games, after the fact, look at the betting lines and how they lined up. So I'll try and do what I can to keep you guys involved if you're betting. The Score has lines. Perfect. I will definitely check that out and keep that in mind for the future. Chris, also thank you for giving us your picks. I will definitely be taking those down, and we can kind of track your picks as well and see how we do. UFL winners in week 1: Kings, Battlehawks, Renegades, Storm. Okay, I will take those down for you as well, Curtis. Any final thoughts from you, TJ?
I'm excited about the season. It's a big year for the UFL. And in the past, when we've said it's a big year for a spring league, it usually meant nervousness or the assumption it wasn't going to work out. But in this case, it's finally optimism. It's everything's changing, everything's looking good. It should be on its way up. So I'm just really excited to see a very successful season for the UFL and already talking about the future. So I think spring football is in great shape.
Travis?
Yeah, I'm just excited for the season. Make sure you guys catch the games. The Stallions versus the Kings is on Fox. DC and St. Louis is on ESPN. Houston and Dallas is on Fox. And Orlando and Columbus is on ESPN. So just make sure you're catching the game so that you can join in the comments, so that you know what's going on just like we do. But I'm excited for it.
Absolutely. One thing we didn't talk about today that I just want to throw out there is 2 of the games have been flexed to NFL Network, which I personally think is awesome. If you want to get NFL fans involved in the UFL, that's a good way to do it. So we'll see. I'm very curious to see how that all shakes out. But obviously, like I said, not much to unpack there, but wanted to throw that out there for fans because I think that's awesome. And I think that was all facilitated by the ESPN NFL Network kind of purchase there. So good for the UFL, hopefully moving forward. And then maybe we can see this league continue to grow. And like TJ said, I think there's a lot of optimism surrounding this league at this point. Between the USFL and the XFL, we've had consistent spring football since 2022. We're heading into year 5 at this point. So I think at this point we can kind of get over that hump about worrying if the league is going to make it every year and start worrying about what's the next step for them. So shout out to Mike Rapoli, who came in and kind of quelled any concerns about the future of the UFL for the near future. So really respect and admire what he's done so far with the league, and hopefully it continues. So on that
I'm
note,
glad you one last thing. I'm glad you and TJ said that, because honestly, I was thinking about it, and as you guys were doing your closing things, and honestly, like at first when Mike Rapoli took over, it was kind of like, like we're going through ownership change. But honestly, this feels like this is the first year since not just the merger, but since the XFL and USFL have been around, that it doesn't feel like it's a make or break year, which is interesting considering almost every year should be a make or break year for spring football. But even with all the changes that happened that Rapoli came in and took, we talked about this a little bit, Sam, in our chat, that everything seems to be more decisive. We're not waiting. Everything is being, okay, this is the decision. We're releasing at this point, et cetera, down the road. It's not like we're sitting here, well, when are we going to get it? Well, it's supposed to be Tuesday, but now it's next week. And it just feels a lot more like the word optimize that TJ used is great. Like it's just the optimization of the entire league feels more well-oiled, I guess, than in past years. So shout out to Mike Rapoli for sure on that front too.
Agreed. And honestly, I mean, obviously we're here because we're spring football fans. So, I always say, I have a saying that more teams means, good business for media. So let's hope they expand. Let's hope they're here forever. Let's hope that this league continues to provide opportunities and maybe, never grows to be like an NFL rival, but it can be a legitimate NFL alternative that players are really looking to as a destination for their career rather than just an alternative to, their ultimate goal. So I think we're getting there. And I think ultimately the league is positioning themselves to continue growing for the future. So I think we're in good shape for the first time in a long time when it comes to outdoor spring football. So on that note, can't wait to cover this again next week and come back and talk about next week's games, because I'm sure it's going to be a lot more entertaining to have real actual football to talk about. So make sure you guys are joining us. And as mentioned before, keep an eye out for All Hail the Kings, the dedicated Louisville Kings podcast that the Sports 10 Network will be doing here on Shady Sports, as well as on their channel as well. And if you haven't done so already, please make sure you hit the like button, comment, subscribe. And if you really want to support us, go check out our merchandise on brandingblanks.com. So on that note, we'll catch you guys next Sunday, or if you want to catch some indoor football, next Saturday at 8 a.m. Eastern time. Both of these shows will kick off about that time on the weekend. So whether it's Saturday or Sunday, you can catch us right here at Shady Sports Network live every weekend.